Deep in the back seat of a moving car, a young woman is fighting for her life, but she isn't panicking. Instead, she is quietly using a stolen phone to plant evidence against the man driving. That woman is Denise Lee. She's 21 years old, a mother of 2 young boys, and married to her high school sweetheart, Nathan. More importantly, her father is a veteran police officer trained in tracking fugitives, and he taught his daughter exactly what to do in a nightmare scenario. The ordeal started on the afternoon of January 17, 2008. Nathan arrived at their Florida home to find the front door unlocked and the house suffocatingly hot. Inside, their 2 toddlers were alone and crying. Denise was nowhere to be found. There was no ransom note, no forced entry, and no signs of a struggle. A young mother had vanished from her own living room in broad daylight, leaving authorities without a single physical clue to start their search. When police arrived, their attention immediately turned to Nathan. Law enforcement procedure dictates closely scrutinizing the spouse in any sudden disappearance. That dynamic changed the moment Denise's father, Sergeant Rick Goff, pulled up to the house. His colleagues knew him as a tough, highly respected undercover cop. When Rick vouched for Nathan, the officers backed off and began looking outward. Rick immediately went to interview the only neighbor in the area. She recalled something disturbing. Authorities were forced to conduct a massive physical grid search over miles of Florida highway, entirely blind. At 6:13 p.m. in a neighboring county, a 911 dispatcher answered a garbled call. On the other end was a woman in extreme distress. Denise had managed to steal her captor's burner phone and dial out without him noticing. She couldn't speak to the operator directly without giving herself away, so she disguised the call as a desperate plea to the man holding her hostage. While crying and pleading to be let out, she purposefully wove location markers and landmarks into the conversation, feeding the dispatcher the details they needed under the guise of fear. Another call from someone who recognized the vehicle tipped police off to a local man named Michael King. When a raid squad kicked down the door to King's house, the TV was blaring, but the rooms were empty. Inside the bedroom, they found a makeshift bed and a terrifying piece of evidence. Hidden amongst the blankets was a piece of duct tape with long, light brown hair stuck to it. Denise had deliberately pulled her own hair out by the roots to leave it behind. A root is required for a conclusive DNA match. Denise knew this. She was acting as her own forensic investigator, planting undeniable biological evidence to tie her captor to that specific room. Around 6:30 p.m., a woman driving down the highway spotted a green Camaro next to her. In the back seat, a hand was frantically banging against the glass. The driver immediately grabbed her phone and dialed 911. The caller asked if she should follow the car, but the kidnapper ran a red light to lose her. At the dispatch center, a catastrophic miscommunication occurred. The operator passed on the complaint, but no patrol cars were ever dispatched to that intersection. 3 hours later, highway troopers finally cornered the green Camaro. They pulled Michael King from the driver's seat, covered in mud. He was alone, and he insisted to investigators that he was actually the victim of a kidnapping himself. Detectives tore through the vehicle looking for answers. Deep in the back seat, they found a cheap metal ring with a small stone in the middle. It was the promise ring Nathan had given Denise when they first started dating as teenagers. Denise had maintained her composure to leave a physical path for law enforcement to follow. She provided every necessary lead, but a communication breakdown severed the chain, preventing the rescue she had spent hours preparing for. 2 days later, authorities excavated a patch of disturbed earth and discovered Denise's body. By August 2009, her family found themselves sitting in a courtroom, staring at Michael King as he formally pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder. King's defense team aggressively targeted the gaps in the state's case. The prosecution couldn't locate a gun, and the defense argued that without a definitive murder weapon, there was room for reasonable doubt. But King's lawyers ran directly into the forensic trap Denise had set. The jury was presented with the DNA-rich hair she ripped from her own scalp, and the incredibly specific ring she tucked safely under the car seat. Then, the prosecution played her secret 911 tape, where her killer's voice could clearly be heard answering her in the background. The overwhelming forensic web she spun left the defense with nowhere to hide. After just 2 hours of deliberation, the jury returned a guilty verdict, sentencing Michael King to death. With Michael King behind bars, The family's attention shifted to the breakdown at the dispatch center. Denise had provided the leads, and they demanded to know why the system designed to protect her hadn't been ready to act. They campaigned relentlessly until lawmakers passed the Denise Amber Lee Act. The legislation instituted strict new standards across the state of Florida, requiring emergency dispatchers to complete over 200 hours of training. The mission carried over into the rest of the family. Denise's sister, Amanda, honored her by taking a seat at a 911 console herself, answering calls to protect others. And Denise's two sons, Noah and Adam, grew up knowing exactly who their mother was. When plunged into absolute terror, Denise Lee relied on her father's training. She operated as an investigator in the back seat of her captor's car, securing the evidence needed to convict a killer and forcing a flawed system to change.